Okay, we're back. We just took a little break. And we're just going to continue on with, was it your transition, I suppose? You talked about having the rug pulled out, but that was 2007, wasn't it?
Yeah, so summer 2007. I think it's fair to say for me that, all of that I described, all of the above that I described in terms of all the life experiences, all the processes, all the sort of former military training to, a high level, um, it really almost, paled into insignificance in terms of what then happened to me and what effectively I had to deal with. So, I decided to walk the walk and fulfill a personal ambition to learn to fly. And it was the aviation dream that I had. I wanted to do that in earnest. And so I set my goal to go out to Florida, enticed by decent weather, bluebird sunshine days, and the prospect of getting the flying training done within a relatively short window. And I was tasked that year with the squadron to go out to Afghanistan and actually work on a live job, with the team. And I was looking forward to that. There was an air of trepidation, like any soldier gets. This is for real. We're going. But I was looking forward to it. But I felt even more reason why I wanted to fulfil this ambition, because I thought, you never know. I may not survive if I go out there. So why not try to live life and sort of take the bull by the horns and get out there? And so off I went. I went to Florida. Got my visa from the US Embassy after a massive interrogatory process. Make sure that I wasn't sort of malintention, as it were, and I found myself on a comprehensive flying training program in Florida, and I was learning to fly a light aircraft, and I'm going to fast forward. So basically, 1 month into this process, I'm now finished my work with the instructors, had several different instructors, and I got to a stage where I was now pilot in command, so flying solo, and I was qualified to do so. And on this one particular day, I was up in the pattern, working within the pattern. So I was at 1,000 feet indicated overhead. Over that is an aerodrome, so a small municipal aerodrome within Florida. And I had an engine fire which flared up at altitude. So I'm 1,000 feet as indicated on altimeter on my instrument panel in front of me. And no sooner has I'd recognised the thin streaks of flame outside, the fire then breached the cockpit internally at 1,000 feet. I then started to make a concerted decision to reduce height from the pattern and to drop down. So started to nudge down. So reduce height, and I'm starting to descend, and I'm bringing the aircraft down towards a lower point towards the ground and a safe level. As I'm descending, the fire picks up within the cockpit, and I get to about 500 feet indicated, and the fire's about halfway up within the height of the cockpit. Starting to get pretty toasty in there, and there was a lot of anxiety going on in my mind. And suddenly I had a light bulb moment, and I guess it harks back to perhaps all the training in life, whatever. It just came to me, and I realised that in order to survive this, because I couldn't stomach the idea of burning for too much longer, because effectively I was burning from the feet and ankles upwards where the fire initially breached. So I realised that in order to stand a chance of survival, I needed to get out of that cockpit like quick, sharp, and as hastily as I possibly could manage. And in doing so, I then just reverted back to emergency protocol. You fall back on your training. It's what I would have done on the battleground if it had got heated, and if the situation would have come on top. You have to think back to your training, and you have to put it into practice in order to stand a chance of curbing back the enemy, as it were. And in this particular case, the enemy was the fire in the cockpit. And I needed to get out. I needed to get the hell out of there. So I reverted back to the training that I'd had with the instructors, and they basically said, follow emergency protocol, which is exactly what I did. I turned the ignition off, the magnetos, the lights, the strobes, the fuel pump, the fuel selector valve, everything off in sequence as per emergency protocol. It sounds complex, but it was relatively easy. You're basically just following the dashboard from one side, from left to right, and then down the center column in this particular light aircraft type that I was flying. Everything off. And then I got to a point, a very low level, a very sort of safe level, as it were, to set myself up. So at that point, I removed my headset. So I literally just took off the headset, threw it in the opposite footwell on the opposite side of the cockpit, unbuckled the canopy door to my left side. So carefully fiddled with that handle to unbuckle. And then I was able to push that up to the vertical position, like a sort of a Lamborghini style, the door.
Yeah.
And then very low level. So I'm talking 50 feet. I fly over the top of the perpendicular active runway at the aerodrome. Okay, I fly over the top of that perpendicular concrete runway by the width. So I fly across the width way overhead. So I'm 50 feet overhead. I glide over the top of that. Everything's shut down. Headset is removed. Open canopy door. There's more windage coming in. I needed to get out as quick as I could. I'm now eyeballing the proximity. So I'm looking left, I'm looking right, I'm looking ahead and checking for obstacle. And I knew what I was about to do, and I knew I had one choice and one choice only. So I'm 50 feet, 40 feet, 30 feet, checking, looking. It's frantic, but I didn't have long. And I'm trying to remain as calm as I possibly could to pull this off. And then literally at 20 feet or thereabouts, I was like Jack Rabbit. I got onto the seat. I clambered over the left-hand door lip onto the left wing, momentarily composed myself thereby, to get my balance. In a moment on that wing, stood. I looked only at the horizon and not down, because that would be a stupid mistake. And then I looked only at the horizon and then took a giant leap, sort of good old-fashioned British Army, call it what you will, parachute exit style, from the trailing edge of the back of the left wing of the light aircraft that I'd just been piloting. And I did that because the cockpit was a blazing inferno, in all sincerity. And I had to get the hell out of there. And there was no way that I was going to be able to land the aircraft in the conventional sense. And I was faced with, I felt, one viable option. And the simple matter of fact is, fire is an extreme motivator, especially when you happen to be on fire and it's right there. So I chose to make that very hasty and, by my own admission, sort of courageous decision. And the truth is, I pulled it off, but only by the skin of my teeth. So with that in mind, with that said, I landed, from the jump of the back of the giant leap, if you like, of the back of the left wing. I landed like a sack of spud. So boom, I sort of landed down. Soft ground, because it'd been recent torrential rainfall before the flight that I'd made. The sun came out again, but it was recently raining earlier that afternoon. This was 19th of August 2007 in Florida airspace. And having landed, I landed on that soft ground, long razor grass. I immediately rolled around back and forward, smothered the flame. My right of shoulder was still on fire. My right of scalp was still on fire. So I had to pat that out. It was like a Roman candle. And, little did I realise the truth was that the damage was done and it was irreversible. And I then, having extinguished the flame, rolled around in the grass, shoulder and scalp, so patted that out. I remember hearing the sirens sort of woo, 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 they're coming for me, and I'm holding on for grim life. And I didn't think I was going to be able to make it. And fortunately, within maybe 15 minutes or so, there was a local sort of US ambulance vehicle on scene. And I was blinded by this stage because of the reaction. And life as I knew it was never going to be the same again. I mean, I have to emphasize that, 1,000 times over. My life, having been what it was over. It was finished. And I got, soon afterwards, they moved me across the rough ground in the ambulance. They strapped me in. They must have given me morphine because it felt pretty damn good. But I knew in my heart of hearts, in my subconscious that it was just hell on earth. And in all honesty, I didn't think I was going to make it. And I also specialised as a patrol medic within my unit within the forces, so I knew what I was up against. I knew, in other words, I knew what big burns meant to the human body, and that in all sincerity, in all likelihood, I wasn't going to make it. And they moved me across the rough ground in the ambulance. Then they opened the door, they wheeled me out, and all of a sudden this unmistakable sort of downwash and this kind of whoop, 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 whoop. And then they put me in the back of a helicopter and they slid the door shut. And then the doctor's questioning me and asking me, hey man, I'm going to take you to Orlando Regional. I just need you to answer some personal questions here. And this kind of rhetoric went on. And I'm answering loads of questions, and I'm trying to keep it all together in my mind. And I'm under the influence of morphine, and that sensation was like waxing and waning. And the bottom line was, I knew I was done for. I knew I was done. And what I mean by that is that life for me was just moments. Did I have minutes? Did I have hours? Did I have maybe a day at best? I don't know. But I knew, based on the gravitas of that injury, that I knew that there was very slim likelihood of my survival. And I mentioned that I was blinded as well.
Yeah.
And so you can imagine what was going through my head. Not only was I pretty much burned from head to toe because of what happened in that cockpit, and then getting onto the wing and being kind of backblasted by the backwash of the propeller momentarily before I jumped, but then being subsequently blinded because the reaction on the flame to my cornea of the eyeballs. I was down. I was man down, and so I wanted to go at that stage. I literally, it was like a sort of like a soldier like who was badly hit on the battlefield. I knew that I really didn't have long. And so I genuinely wanted to check out. I mean, what else could you wish for? You're not going to wish to survive that. So I held on, and I held on with everything I had. But the truth is I wanted to slip away.
Okay.
And that was the sincere kind of reaction going on in my head. And I remember having another conversation. So helicopter and the doctor in the back dropped me off. And I remember then quiet in the kind of medical kind of reception room at Orlando Regional. And I'm talking to more doctors, more medics. There's a whole wrath of people around me firing questions at me. And there's, I feel the cold of the air conditioning. Somehow through the kind of eyelid, maybe there was some light, but it was negligible.
Yeah.
And honestly, I was messed up, man. I was human being, lowest ebb, like bottom of the barrel. I was that messed up. And it was end of days for me, my friend. That was end of days. And the truth is, the conversation, the questions, I then got quite heated in my mind. And I remember aggressively reacting. I mean, who the hell could blame me, for Christ's sake? And I remember snapping at the doctors, like, basically, what the fuck? Just put me out of my freaking misery here and stop asking me questions. I said, I don't want this life. I'll sign out, and I'll sign on the dotted line if that's what it takes. And then the next thing I know, nothing. They must have helped me out. They must have put me out, as it were.
Put you under.
Put me out of my misery. But I, indeed, I did wake. So I woke, fact of the matter, truth, I woke 6 months later in Chelmsford in Essex.
Okay.
And I'm in a hospital, and I've now got an Essex, accented nurse, bless her cotton socks. All right, Jamie, we've got to get you moving now. We've got to get you up and about, and you've been laid up for some time. And I'm like, little did I know, but no shit, Sherlock.
Yeah.
But I'd actually been under for 6 months.
Wow.
A long time,
Yeah.
And in drug-induced coma, effectively. And the journey, the long and arduous and epic journey of the rehabilitation of Jamie Hull, that was like day one in my mind, because I was conscious, right? Because before I was drug-induced.
Yeah.
So arguably that was the easy stage. Don't get me wrong, I was fighting for every single cell within my entire body for those 6 months. But I was subconsciously fighting, and I was in the fight of my life. It was World War III. Of course it was.
Yes.
And I was acute trauma all the way. But as far as I was concerned, the work didn't begin until day one, Chelmsford.
Yeah. When you woke up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you can kind of get your head around that.
So that was the start of your journey. So 6 months brings us into 2008.
Correct, yeah.
And so that's when
Yeah.
your recovery journey begins.
Yeah, like early stages, you know, back end of the winter, early 2008, British winter time. It was a shock from Florida. You know, I remember waking up in that hospital in Chelmsford. That's the central burns unit for the UK, incidentally.
Okay.
And they mainly deal with burns that are like plus 40%. And little did I realise that according to my medical diagnosis from the day of the incident in Florida, I was actually 63, so 63% third degree burn. And yeah, that's a magnitude that you know, that you don't want to get your head around. It is a scary place to be. And in all sincerity, in all honesty, a very small subset of the human population on this planet would probably have the wherewithal and the fight to be able to come through that.
Yeah.
And I think the only reason why I was able to fight through is because of who I was when it happened. And I'm not just blowing my own trumpet, but, you know, I was a highly trained athlete when I got injured, you know, because of my service as a reservist with UKSF. And I was in the great shape. I was in the best shape of my life. I was probably akin to, like, you know, Premiership football player. You know, every day training.
Yeah.
The mentality, every day I had that fighting edge cognitively going on in my mind. Every day I was hungry for it. And I wanted to keep that up.
And that helped you.
And so that was me. That was who I was. And if I hadn't have been that guy, I think like the night before the incident in Florida with the aircraft and the fire, the night before I was out doing a 10K run, like 6.2 miles with, I think with one of the lads out there who was a keen runner. You know, I had the Saucony like fancy running shoes, you know, little skimpy shorts and a little running vest. And that was me. I'd be hitting the tarmac and that was me. And I was a gifted athlete back then, you know, and I was putting, you know, 5 minutes 30, 5:45 average, you know, per mile. You know, and I was doing sub 6 minutes always, you know, in my training for the mile. So I was up there, you know.
Yeah.
And so it was that guy, it was that man
That
gave me the fight.
Yeah.
That I have to thank. Like, I'm not the same guy now. You know, I lost my operational career. It's not a sob story. It's not kind of get the violin out, but by magnitude, by virtue of the injury, 63% third degree burns, internal injuries from the jump, some nerve damage in the lower limbs, rendering me with bilateral foot drop or bilateral neuropathy in both lower limbs. You know, as a result of all of that and all the scarring, etc., you know, there's no way I was going to run with the SF squadron anymore. Done, finished, game over. You know, like end of, like rethink. And so that was me. So like I say, the rug got pulled from underneath. And I had to move on. And going back to hospital, so I wake up in Chelmsford, and the first thing this lovely Essex nurse, in fact, I hated her, you know, because you don't want to get woken up from a 6-month drug-induced coma. It's some hell on earth.
Yeah.
So she's opening the window and letting the fresh air in, and I'm like, oh my God, you know, I can't deal with this, you know.
Weird question. When you woke up, could you see at that point?
I could actually. The vision was somewhat hazy and blurry, but yeah, the eyes had recovered. So the cornea on both eyes had scarred, but it was kind of a little bit sort of visual axis, one eye not so much. Yeah, still scarred, but my vision actually beyond that is kind of probably, thankfully, still kind of, you know, of sort of, you know, good standard from my age. So I'm fortunate that it recovered in that sense.
Yeah.
So I was going to mention that in Chelmsford, one of the very first things she said, so Jamie, you know, so I'm going to have to tell you a little bit about what's happened. And she sort of filled in some of the blanks, and I'm like, oh my God, you know, Jesus, I've survived. Everything's so hazy and foggy, and I'm 6 months on, you know. And then the next thing she does, she says, you're going to need to look at yourself, my love, you know. I'm going to get a mirror for you, and you're going to have to check yourself out. And sure enough, I checked out the mirror, and man, I was like out there. You know, that was a tough thing for me, because I mean, I'm 13 years on. I look, you know, sort of way better than I used to look. You know, I
Okay.
had a lot of surgery,
Yeah.
and you know, I've tirelessly kind of pushed my body and rehabilitated, and I'm now back to like I'm swimming a mile in the pool. I'm hiking like 5 mile stretches, or I'm knocking, you know, sort of 50-mile bike rides out at home. And I do this regularly, you know. I'm an old athlete. It's in the blood. I just get a lot out of it, you know.
Yeah.
So I've spent time in the saddle, so to speak, rehabilitating myself for the last 13, 14 years. And yeah, I'm 1,000 times better than the man I was, you know, when I woke up in Chelmsford.
Yeah.
Or indeed, you know, when it happened to me in Florida on that day. So having seen myself in the mirror, you know, I veritably looked like the Elephant Man. My face and my head was all swollen, and I looked hideous. You know, just had like raw surgery around the eyes, and my upper and lower eyelid grafts, for the record, were fully grafted
Okay.
and replaced essentially. You know, because the old skin was kind of in tatters
Yeah.
from third-degree burn. I mean, I had a nasty full thickness third-degree burn, so I'm lucky. You know, I had good surgeons. You know, and these were the very best in the world, in Florida especially. And to give you an indication, to give you an idea, my med bill in the States was actually it was some, you know, two just so 2.6 million US dollars at the time. That's a lot of cash. It's
It's
a
a
lot of
fair
money.
whack. Yeah.
It's a lot of money, and that was all that time ago.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it would be worth now, but I mean, I'm grateful for that world class kind of expert surgical intervention that I had, and much of it. You know, if it wasn't for the nurses, Orlando Regional in particular for me, and what the Americans did to kind of pull me back from the brink it was in a medical sense, then I wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be having this conversation. And so yeah, later on, Chelmsford, the mirror, you know, and having to accept all of that, that was massive in itself. People don't realise, but you know, something like burn, and I'm not detracting from any other traumas or injuries, but burn is so all-consuming. So it affects all bodily systems on a cellular level. And what I mean by that, it affects like you know, the lymphatic system that's driving, you know, all of those kind of hormones and fluids around the body, and kind of equally distributing and balancing all of that. It affects like the endocrine system. It affects cardiovascular system, so heart and lungs. It naturally affects, it goes without saying, but it affects our biggest organ. A lot of people take this for granted. Our biggest organ is in fact the skin and
Yes.
the body surface area, in other words,
Yeah.
of which we have a lot of skin. And that skin has about 18 different kind of, call it mechanical cellular functions. And a lot of people don't realize this, but there's a tremendous science behind our bodies. So when an organ like the skin gets annihilated to some 63% third-degree burn, in my case, then you are up against it. And all bodily systems are thereby compromised and equally up against it. And so for me, 6 months drug induced, that was the reason why, to give you an idea. And then a further 18 months in the UK inpatient hospital system, followed by, I would probably say, about the first 7 years was nothing but surgery.
Okay.
So that was my journey. So even though I got out of inpatient, so I got out of hospital after 2 years,
Right.
I then spent the next 5 years also having further surgeries.
So in and out.
At home.
Yeah.
So at home, recuperating and rehabilitating, but I was back and forward to the hospital like 3 times a week, and surgeries, you know, every month or every couple of months, whatever it was. And that journey continued. And I'm pleased to say I'm out the other side. Probably the psychological side of it took me a solid 3 years to accept, until I could look in the mirror and not kind of grieve for the old me, you know, that better looking former guy, you know, because I didn't have the scars and I had more hair and all that kind of jazz. and I grieved that for a long time. I grieved that guy for like 3 years,
Okay.
and the physical recovery probably took, I'd say, 3 to 5 years, and then the surgery journey for 7 years until I finished with the surgeons. Interestingly, I still have surgery now, but on a much less invasive sense. So I now have some follow-up laser treatments still, and I'm still in the system.
Okay.
Even 14 years on, believe it or not, I'm still having a few little tweaks with laser here and there, just to
Okay.
sort of, not for in terms of vanity, but I do so for to improve the cellular function of the skin again, because it's that complex organ.
Yeah.
And actually the laser, without going into it all, can improve the cellular substrate deep down, and it can therefore render better cellular functions all round within the depth of the skin's structure and integrity. So I'm still having tweaks, and on it goes. The journey continues. So in a nutshell, what I'm trying to say is that burns takes a very long time. It probably takes longer than anything to get over, and you're probably going to be rehabilitating and recovering from that for the rest of your life. But on a plus note, for listeners, my bottom line, I'd like to suggest is by sharing this, is that, in essence, with great will and determination, I think it's proof of the pudding that, you can, if you hold on and if you keep going, then you can come through life's darkest episodes. You've just got to want it, and you've got to be that hungry to succeed. And in my testimony with the burns, that was what it was all about for me. I needed to hold on. I needed to find a way to rehabilitate and to find my new self, in the new body, in the new skin, the new version of Jamie Hull. Call it version 2.0, but that was what I was gunning for, and that was what I was really striving for, and I got there in the end. But a lot of will, a lot of determination, a lot of suck it and see, and a lot of thankfully, amazing surgeons, both the US side of the pond and indeed here with the NHS as well, which I'm extremely grateful for.
And the journey continues, right? You continue to battle that, as you say. So once you got over the initial 5 to 7 years, did you give yourself new goals and new challenges, or was it just more about maintaining your health over anything else?
Yeah, I did set myself new goals. It's a great question. I think it's really important as well, because in my mind, what differentiates the kind of, perhaps, Joe Average out there to the real go-getters. And, there are many examples of go-getters. And if anyone, is remotely ambitious to want to get on in life, then in my mind and in my attitude, having come through this kind of horrific ordeal back in 2007 with the burns, is that, the difference being is that if you're hungry to succeed, then figuratively, the best way to do that is to set goals. And that's what I did for myself. I set goals. I didn't just kick back, let the grass grow under my feet. It would have been easy for me to kick back. Okay, I'm medically retired now from the forces, from the policing and all the rest of it. Get a little bit of pension coming in, maybe get some, government assistance in a little bit of benefit because of a little bit of disability or so on. Kick back, relax, kind of metaphorically, smoking jacket, cigar, every day, Netflix, whatever, Xbox.
Yeah.
No, I needed to set goals. Life for me didn't just stop there. The way that I looked at it was that, I've survived. Okay, fundamentally, I've survived here. I've survived a major ordeal. There's no denying that. Major ordeal. Absolute life-changing. And, career stopping, everything. So I needed to rethink, and I needed to rework what the future was. I didn't just want to be, sat at home twiddling my thumbs without future prospects, without hope. And I needed to figure out what it is that I could be capable of doing. And I needed to thereby test myself, and I needed to set goals. So in a nutshell, I started to walk and I started to push the boundaries. That gave me more time to think. So I learned to walk. I mean, for the record, I had to learn to feed, to feed myself, to write my letters in hospital, to walk, with the help of strapping male physios in a harness they put me in, because I couldn't walk. I was so weak from being laid up for 6 months. I was like an astronaut returning from like the space station. My body was like absolutely like, muscularly defeated.
Yeah.
And
Hadn't
so I
been
had
used
to
for 6
rebuild
months,
all
like you
of that.
say.
Yeah, it was a big job. And I started to walk, and to give you, to paint a picture. So I first of all learned to walk in a hospital, and I was kind of walking between those bars. You see that in the physio centre.
Yes.
Holding onto those big physio bars for support. And then I graduated to like a couple of sticks, and I'm mobile, and then one stick, and then I'm using a walking pole at home in the local area. And then, really, I learned to figuratively walk around the block. And then the block for me got bigger because I'd pushed the boundaries of the block. So the block initially was like the cul-de-sac where I lived, for example. But then I thought, the confidence grew doing the cul-de-sac. But well, if I could do the cul-de-sac, what else can I do? And that was it for me. I was like, I can do more streets. I can like factor in some more streets here and build up the size of this block. Build up the circumference, if you like, of my overall walk. And that's how I did it. And then literally before, within a year of being at home, that block for me represented 8 miles, an 8-mile loop around the local area. And I guess that harked back to some like military thing. If I could do the 8 miler,
Yeah.
I could crack an old combat fitness test, the old CFT 8 miler. But so that's just where I was. I was trying to gun to get some semblance of the old me and active health back again. I didn't know how far I could push it and achieve. The truth was I got back the old sort of walker, but the old kind of sprinter, the old athlete in the true sense was very much more difficult, much more complex, because I had nerve damage in my lower limb. So in both legs, it wasn't going to happen. But I learned to ride a push bike. I gradually got back in the water. And so some of the highlights for me, really, just to sort of kind of wrap it up, some of the highlights would have been I learned to walk, pushed the boundaries on the block got bigger, and I kept working that. I ended up doing London Marathon one year, just power walking the London Marathon.
Wow.
I did it in 8 hours and 30 minutes.
Wow. That's
around
incredible.
London. And fulfilled that. I got over the finish line. Exhausted, but elated.
Yeah.
And I'd done it. I was one of the last men, literally, to cross that line, because my feet were partially, kind of, with the nerve damage. And then I went to New York. A friend of mine, was impressed, and I guess had a word with some buddies that he had, and as the old saying goes, not what you know, but who you know. I got picked up by some friends in New York, and I was invited to do New York Marathon, with accommodation. It was like a no-brainer. Like, thanks very much. I stayed like a stone's throw from Central Park, and I found myself going through all 5 boroughs of New York.
Wow.
So from Staten Island through Brooklyn, through Queens, through Manhattan, then looping up around the Bronx and back down to Manhattan. And it was epic, And the Americans like encouraging me on the sidewalk. Even the police were like kind of giving it someone, like blowing their whistle, to kind of empower you and encourage you. And that gave me a lot of, it was moments like that in my recovery that gave me a lot of, just willpower, really.
Yeah.
That sheer, wow, this is life. I'm living life. I'm taking life by the horns, right? I'm living, and that's what it was all about. And it was these moments that stick with me. Of course, you can't do a London Marathon or a New York Marathon. You can't have that kind of like those magic moments week in, week out. It's not practical. You couldn't afford it, for one thing. And these events, they only come around once a year if you're lucky.
So they were done power walking.
Yeah,
Like,
so I did the power walking, I did New York. I tried to better myself. Every goal, I tried to better myself, and that's what I was all about. So
Okay.
London, 8 hours 30, the first one. Then I did New York in 7 hours 7 minutes.
Wow, that's a chunk of difference.
So it was quicker, and it was about improving. It was about improving on the last performance, right? I knew I wasn't like a gifted, like I'm not that old SF guy anymore, trying to break like 3 hours or whatever. That's not me, because I've got the damage to my limbs.
Yeah.
That guy's gone. but I'm the new guy. But why not try to be the best version 2.0, right?
Yeah,
Why
yeah.
not try to be the best version of that new guy? And that's what I became all about in my mind. So back to New York, 7:07 on the timing, crossing the line. It was like, for me, it was like, yeah, I've done it.
Yeah.
And then I went back to New York about a year on, and Help for Heroes this time gave me an opportunity to raise a few quid for the charity and fundraise and awareness, because obviously they'd picked up on the fact that, I told, the story was out there. I'd done London, I'd done New York, and I was getting a few results for me, my personal story. So they said, would you like to do it for us? And we'll give you a charity place. And I'm like, I'd love to do it, but, I'm not sure if I can beat New York, if that's what you're looking for, because that nearly finished me.
Yeah.
Power walk 7:07. Anyway, I trained and I put everything into it. And the truth is, I did a bit of like sort of shuffle jogging, power walking, shuffle jogging, and I got around, all those sort of boroughs in central London and everything. And then, I don't know how the hell I did it, but I think I did it in 6 hours and 20 minutes.
What?
So I shaved some serious time off the clock.
Bloody hell.
And that's not bad for a power walker.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's nearly an hour each time you do it.
Yeah. So I for me, that was a major big up, right? And I was thrilled. I was genuinely, personally delighted to crack that. And don't get me wrong, I would love to have done 6 hours, but I mean,
that's incredible.
The fact is, I thrashed 7:07 by a long shot, and before that, I thrashed 8:30 for the first marathon. The truth of it, after the 3 marathons, I was like, never again. It's not happening. It's like it kills me, the blisters, the kind of like it takes 3 days to get over it.
That third one, was it London or New York?
So I did London, New York, then London marathon again.
Yeah. Okay.
And then
that's incredible.
I did some more stuff. So I know I could go on and on, but I think the key highlights would have been I learnt to ride the bike. At first, the bike was a challenge, and I had to set targets. I had to set goals, and I didn't even have the confidence to ride a trike because of my legs. So I actually bought a trike first of all. I realised the trike was okay, and then I actually got rid of that, and then I bought a 2-wheel upright road bike, and then Help for Heroes offered me the chance to do a couple of bike rides. So I did big battlefield bike ride in France. So we did, they took us down on Eurostar, lovely trip with a bunch of veterans and some of the staff and some of the very, generous public, men and women that paid to join us and support the veterans, which was just magic. So they all came down with us on Eurostar. We got to Paris. We definitely tried to behave ourselves in Paris, as it were, and not have too many sherbets.
Yeah.
The following day, we were on the bikes and we started, and we rode all the way back from Paris in stages, as it were, to get all the way back to the ferry terminal. So it would have been like Calais, on the ferry back to Dover, and then literally we rode all the way up to, I think we finished in 1 year we finished in, it might have been Chatham in Kent, and I think the next year we rode back up to London. So yeah, just an awesome thing to be a part of. And then the seed was there also for me to do a bigger event, and I got a great opportunity with a team of fellow servicemen. So there was 8 of us in the team that made the selection, and we did Race Across America. So
Nice.
This was epic. We went to America, 17-man support crew, all the vehicles. We had recreational big RV vehicles. We had some support vans with the bike mechanics. And we had some doctors supporting us, a couple of medics, just in case we got sick or injured. And we pulled it out of the bag. So we did, for the record, we did Oceanside, San Diego on the beach in California. We rode over 3,000 miles, like 3,100 miles, all the way across America. So it was like through 11 states, 350 individual US communities to reach Annapolis in Maryland, by the beach, by the pier there. Yeah. And went to a fantastic sort of reception. It was early hours of the morning when we got there, some 7 days and 7 hours later. But we pulled it off. And and this was cool because we were a bunch of veterans, right? That's all we were. We were a bunch of for all intents and purposes, broken vets. So there I was, burns. We had one guy who was ex-para and he got a spinal injury. I think we had a you know, maybe an SF guy that had a parachuting accident. We had several guys who, sorry, one guy, a Marine, that got his foot kind of badly hit with an IED. We had, and then 4 guys that were on handbikes. So these guys, like, miraculously survived, all of them. All 4 of them got their lower limbs taken off with IED, you know, devices
Yeah.
in the war. So, but amazingly, all 8 of us. So with all 8 men, we only had 7 viable legs between us, literally, because 4 of the guys on handbikes crossed that finish line. You know, cycle across America, race across America, 7 days, 7 hours, and about 38 minutes.
Wow.
So it's the proof again, the proof of the pudding. With the will and determination, you can achieve. You've just got to want it. And sometimes you've got to, you need a little bit of help, right?
Yeah.
You know, help for heroes or, you know, your friends, your family members, your colleagues, your associates at work or whatever it is. And sometimes you, as a veteran or as a, you know, an injured member of society, you know, or if you've got disability or whatever, sometimes you just have to put your hand up and indeed ask for help.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of help out there.
Yeah.
But if you, perhaps acknowledge that, ask for help, then in my experience, there's a lot of help and help's out there, and you can find a way and you can still achieve great things. In a nutshell, you know, these events proved to me that I was still worthy, that I wasn't just a broken, crippled soldier, you know, by virtue of a 63% third-degree burns injury in the cockpit in America. It proved to me that ultimately, you know, with will and determination, that I could go and I could live a life, and I could rework and I could re-employ, and I went on to lead expeditions for schools market and indeed private expedition. I went on to do scuba diving stuff and mountaineering stuff in those worlds within the expedition kind of sense. I did a lot of public speaking and to share my story. You know, I've talked to schools groups. I've talked to small medium enterprises right through to large corporate companies in the city and so on. And it's nice to be able to share some sentiment about my journey and ultimately to really share the message that, you know, no matter how life dark gets, or no matter how life it could become, you know, where we get setbacks, you know, ultimately there's always hope. You've got to stay hungry, and that's what it's all about.
And there's new goals to aim for, and like you say, reaching out for help is not weakness, it's strength. And I've actually got that on my website. So
absolutely right.
It's very true.
There's absolutely no weakness or hardship in asking for any kind of help whatsoever, be it for, you know, physical assistance or be it for, you know, mental health kind of assistance, recovery and recuperation in that sense. And, you know, whatever it might be in life, because with a will, you know, there's a way, and with the right level of determination, with the right attitude, you know, no matter who you are, you can get on in the world, and you can set goals, and you can aspire, and you can achieve, and I think that's what it's all about, and that's the difference between being, frankly, you know, Joe Average out there, or, you know, potentially one who chooses to achieve and one who really chooses to try to get the most out of this relatively short life that we're all living.
Yeah,
it's no dress rehearsal.
Yeah,
you've got to want it.
Got one life, right?
Yeah, that's it.
So have you got any like plans for the future that you're aiming for now?
In a nutshell, you know, I'd like to still, you know, by my own admission, I'm getting older. You know, I'm no spring chicken. I'm now sort of mid-40s. I'm middle age. You know, what can I say? I'm officially middle age, but I would like to try, at least to the best of my ability, to try to challenge myself going forwards. You know, be it sort of further physical challenges. I would like to promote myself, you know, and challenge myself a bit more in business as well, because, you know, maybe I'm never going to be able to do the physical stuff forevermore. Maybe I'll sort of pick up on perhaps certain business initiatives and try to drive those in order to, you know, to try to get on in the business sense, but also to genuinely to try to help others, because that's a part of what I'm all about. Again, sort of sharing my story and try to motivate and try to inspire. Cliche as it sounds, but I believe that using a little bit of wisdom and sort of life experience from old and sort of pulling it all together, I can try to help people and to motivate. So it's bits and pieces that I still feel quite strongly about, that I still want to go on and do. And yeah, undoubtedly, I will still like to challenge myself in the expedition world. So that means I would still perhaps participate in the odd expedition, and indeed, I'll probably be leading expeditions from time to time, depending on what the sort of client demand is and stuff like that.
Nice.
Yeah, and the other thing is as well, the story sort of snowballed for me. So I was doing a lot of speaking, and I was doing sort of the ambassador role for Help for Heroes for some years, which I still conduct myself within that capacity. And I have several colleagues that help and assist with all of that. And I'd also just like to mention that for anybody that's interested, for anybody that's perhaps enjoyed the the story and the general conversation, that I've got the story in general is coming out in publication very, very soon.
Nice.
So watch this space.
Yeah.
And for the record, it's Life on a Thread. Jamie Hull is the author.
Nice.
And it's going to be with Ebury Press publication under Penguin Random House.
Fantastic.
So I'm really looking forward to that. Life on a Thread is one to look out for.
Yeah. Is that going to be available in all good
It's going to
stores,
be initially. It's going to be initially so hardback press.
Okay.
For the main literary sort of market, but also like most of these things, they're going to develop it, and they're looking to fire it out in ebook.
Nice.
So if people that prefer to read it on the Kindle,
Yeah.
electronic version, Life on a Thread, or the audio book as well, which will be probably quite a hot favourite, especially for a lot of the younger generation.
Yeah.
They're like quite busy, or I don't know, they're doing their studies or whatever, sat there. They'll be able to listen to it in the background with the audio book for Life on a Thread.
Very good. Or people like me that don't really read. So
So yeah, there's the way it's going to probably progress is that the paperback will come out, but it won't be out for another year. So if you want to get in on the action, and you want a far more comprehensive version,
yeah.
Then it's an interesting, quirky story. It's designed to entertain, but it's also designed, and I say this quite humbly, it's designed to hopefully inspire and to really uplift the reader. And I've spent about 2.5 years working on this project. So, I think, people can get a lot out of it, hopefully.
Very good. Very good. Well, that's exciting to come. So I suppose at this point in the podcast, we've gone over an awful lot. But I'm going to give you the opportunity. Is there anything that you'd like to share with anybody, maybe thinking about joining the military? Maybe advice that you could share?
I guess, yeah. The military gets a bit of bad press, doesn't it, from time to time, because of, I don't want to get too political about all of this, but what's happened more recently, with Iraq and Afghanistan, and of course we had a casualty toll. Indeed, we had a death toll. We lost a lot of, fantastic and driven members of our society because of the wars, effectively, and so it gets a little bit of bad press, and perhaps it's not as popular as perhaps a career option, but I still firmly believe, and I'm not trying to sell it in any shape or form, but I still firmly believe that for young people in this day and age, it's a career opportunity prospectively for the younger generation that offers fantastic opportunities. And I say that from the bottom of my heart. From my early experience with OTC, which I mentioned, indeed, I did a little bit of time actually with the Army Cadets. I didn't do much, but I did a little bit of time. And from all the opportunities, the the progressive opportunities that I had going on from my time with the OTC and a more regular sort of recognised sort of unit, as it were, or rather established unit from that time that I had and all the opportunities. That's just one example, like one man, one example. That's all it is. But listen, I've known many people that have served, many colleagues that I've met through, Help for Heroes and through the military networks. So we're talking joint forces here. So Army, Navy, Air Force, indeed the reserve components, and the opportunities. And when I hear some of the stories, and when I hear, what some of my colleagues have been up to. They've been all around the world. So I know guys that have been in the Navy. They've sailed around the world, and they've had fantastic opportunity. They've served on like frontline destroyers. They've served on submarines. I'm just throwing it out there generically. I've got friends that have served on sort of nuke fleet subs, and they've sailed around the world. Topside with the Navy. They've been sort of Navy divers. At the highest level. They've been, I know guys, ex-parachute regiment, again, they've been all over the world, ex-Marines, they've done this country a proud service. They've had amazing opportunities by virtue of the duration of their journey and their service. The long and the short of it is, it doesn't really matter what you do. There's many cogs in the wheel in terms of what's offered within the armed forces. Fantastic job opportunities. From Royal Engineers to Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers, through to, Army Educational Services, through to, medics, religious clergy and padres. The list is literally endless. You've just got to use your imagination. So from my humble rhetoric on this would be, whatever interest you have, why not take a look at the military? Because you never know, even from a legal profession, lawyers, aspiring solicitors, go and have a couple of years in the military, even work as, enhance your skill set as an army legal advisor. There's so much out there that you can go on to do, and you might not stay with the military. I'm not suggesting that you should. I mean, I may not have. I may have in my own journey gone on to have a career with, who knows, further policing or aviation or further military or whatever it might have been. But the fact of the matter is, it is one employer, but it's very unique. And I think, for me, it shaped me as a character in my formative years, undoubtedly. It wasn't the only thing that shaped me, but it was one of the big factors in my early development. And I think that equally it can offer the younger generation of today's society tremendous opportunities. It's up to them whether they take that opportunity, but certainly opportunities are there. And as the old saying goes, with the forces, the world is your oyster. It's out there.
Very much so. That's good advice. I think hopefully someone takes up on that. And I say the flip side to it is for anybody that's either coming to the end of their career or maybe getting discharged like you and I through medical reasons. Have you got any advice for them? Obviously, your transition's been slightly different to some of us, but any advice for civilian life or transitioning back to civilian life?
Well, I can only speak on the basis that I'd led a somewhat civilian life prior to the point at which I got injured. So I'd tried different things. It wasn't that I joined the army as a boy soldier, age 16 or 17, like many do. But what I do know is that the army or joint services in that respect, Army, Navy, or indeed Air Force, is only one set of employers that are out there, and I know that there are concentrated practices whereby if you're in service, they can help you to rehabilitate. I know friends that have done this, so full-time colleagues that have done this, and they'd have opportunities whereby they've had resettlement, so they've had money to go off and do courses, but academic training or practical training programs to learn a new skill or indeed to learn a new trade. There's many things that you can go on to do. I think it's the best advice that I could offer, perhaps the more seniors that are looking at getting out, would be, to have an idea specifically about what it is that you want to go on and do. And if you've got an idea, then you're halfway there to making a plan towards effectively setting yourself up to achieve that. Because with an idea, you can then goal set. You can find out what it is to become, that specific tradesman or that particular employee within the civilian world. Find a way that you can get exposure, find a way that you can get, training courses, resettlement training courses that could be, or perhaps a voluntary exposure to the employment, to the said firms, because many people will open the door to you and they'll take you on in a sort of a work experience capacity. And you think, God, I wouldn't want to be doing work experience in my 30s or 40s. But why not? Because often great things can come from that, and in my experience as well. If you're interested to go to, say, work for the bank, well, the fact that I don't know, you might have been formerly Royal Engineer or a Guardsman or, a medic in the Royal Navy or something. It doesn't really matter. They're going to respect you because I guarantee you they're going to see that on paper, on CV, yes, you've got transferable skills. They know that. But the best thing you can do, if you want to go and work for the bank or whatever in the city, go to the bank and tell them that you're interested. What kind of opportunities are there? I'm a serviceman. You might not have necessarily the formal qualification they're looking for, but you could say, is there kind of a program that I could work on? Is there an apprenticeship, or is there an exposure sort of experience program that I can come and join to shadow and to perhaps go in and have a look at it? And you might decide after 6 weeks of like voluntary process that they would back you on. Like I say, you might decide that actually it's not for me, or actually the bank's not quite for me, but actually I've found some other colleagues here or whatever, and insurance is my thing, or perhaps sales within the city, or perhaps I want to go down a sort of a more technical route or an engineering route or something like that. And by getting out there and pushing your, what you think are your initial interests and goals, explore those and just go for it. And irrespective of whether you get to the bank or, whether you fulfill that immediate direct ambition, it doesn't matter. I guarantee you'll get somewhere.
Yeah.
But you've got to, where there's a will, again, there's a way.
Yeah.
And you as an individual, stay hungry and want it, because if you want it, you'll get somewhere in life. And that's the very best advice that I can give the younger generations, or perhaps more senior veterans and so on.
Perfect. Awesome, man. That's it's been quite a journey and some great advice there at the end. So I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you for sharing all of the stuff that you've gone through. It's been quite awesome to hear it. And also thank you for your time. And very last but not least, thank you for your service.
My pleasure. Thanks very much.
This is Military Veterans Podcast, out.